Sandra has used the same financial advisor since she was 32. She liked him. She trusted him. She had referred 3 colleagues to his practice over the years. At 52, she ran a calculation she had never thought to run before. It took about 4 minutes on a compound interest calculator she found in a browser tab. The result made her put the phone down and sit quietly for a moment. She had paid her advisor approximately $90,000 in actual fees over 20 years. She had not written a single check. She had not felt a single payment. The money had been deducted before her statement was ever generated. Then she ran the second number, what that $90,000 would have grown to if it had stayed invested at market returns instead of being extracted each year. The answer was approximately $182,000. Here's the thing. Her advisor did not hide this. The fee was disclosed in the agreement she signed in 2004 and again at every annual review. It appeared as one line in a document she approved each year without running the math behind it. She is not angry at her advisor. She is angry at herself for not running these numbers 20 years ago when the compounding damage was still small enough to change. Asterisk Sandra, at 32, Mars. In 2004, Sandra was 32 years old. She had inherited $200,000 from her grandmother and had no experience managing that amount. A colleague from her office introduced her to a financial advisor at a regional wealth management firm. The advisor was professional, patient, and clear. He explained asset allocation and risk tolerance. He showed Sandra a projection chart that translated her current situation into a manageable retirement picture. He explained the importance of consistent contributions and the compounding effect of starting early. The fee structure was 1% of assets under management per year. On $200,000, that was $2,000 in the first year. $2,000 felt proportionate for what was being described. Professional oversight of her entire financial life, annually updated. She signed the agreement. She set up a $500 monthly automatic contribution. She attended her annual reviews, watched her statements show growth, and considered herself a person who had made a responsible decision with the money her grandmother left behind. Asterisk, 20 years, Sandra is 52 now. Her portfolio sits at approximately $780,000. She has an adult daughter, a mortgage in its final years, and a clear sense of being on track. The 1% fee applied to the total portfolio value every year. In year 1, roughly $2,000. By year 5, roughly $3,100. By year 10, roughly 15, roughly 6,100. By year 20, roughly 7,800. Each year, the fee was larger in dollar terms than the year before because the portfolio it was based on was larger. The cumulative fees paid over 20 years, total approximately $90,000 in actual dollars extracted from the portfolio. The money was deducted at the custodian level before Sandra's statement was generated. The statement showed growth. It did not show what the growth would have been without the deduction. Here's the thing. Sandra knew there was a fee. She had approved it at 20 separate annual reviews. What she had never calculated was the difference between the fee as a percentage of assets and the fee as a cost to compounding, which is a different calculation and the one that matters more. Asterisk question nobody asks for us. The annual review with Sandra's advisor covered the same ground every year. Portfolio performance versus the benchmark. Asset allocation adjustments, contributions, rates, retirement timeline projections. The fee was never the subject of its own conversation. It appeared as a line item on the quarterly statement and as a disclosed percentage in the annual documents. No one presented Sandra with a compound interest calculator and said, here is what this fee has cost your compounding so far, and here is what it will cost over the next 15 years. That calculation was not offered because no client had ever asked for it, and no client had ever asked for it because it was never presented as a question worth asking. The relationship was built on trust in the advisor's expertise, not on fee value audits by the client, but here's what. The calculation belongs to the client. It is the client's money, the client's compounding, and the client's retirement. The advisor has no structural obligation to run a number that might prompt the client to renegotiate the arrangement. The question sits unanswered until the client decides to ask it. Asterisk the calculation. Here are the numbers, Sandra. Starting portfolio, $200,000 at age 32. Monthly contribution, $506,000 per year. Historical average annual return of a diversified U.S. equity portfolio, approximately 7%. Duration, 30 years to age 62. Without the advisory fee at 7% compounded annually, the $200,000 grows to approximately $1,522,000 over 30 years. The monthly contributions grow to approximately $567,000. Total projected portfolio at age 62, roughly $2 million. Advisory fee, the net annual return drops to 6%. At 6%, the $200,000 grows to approximately $1,149,000. The contributions grow to approximately $474,000. Total at age 62, roughly $1,623,000. The difference between the two outcomes, $466,000. But here's what. The $466,000 is not what the advisor earned. The advisor's actual fee income from Sandra over 30 years in nominal dollars collected would be roughly $150,000 to $170,000. The $466,000 is the opportunity cost, the compounding that did not happen because the fee dollars left the portfolio instead of remaining invested. The advisor received the fee. The compounding effect multiplied the cost. Asterisk, why 1% is not 1%. Most people hear 1% annual fee and mentally classify it as a small number. 1 is the smallest significant integer. Percentages feel abstract. The brain does not automatically translate a percentage drag into a compounded dollar loss 30 years into the future. Here is what 1% means in practice. On a $500,000 portfolio, the 1% fee extracts $5,000 in a single year. That $5,000 does not just reduce the year's return by 1%. It leaves the portfolio and stops compounding. At 7% annual return, that single $5,000 grows to approximately $9,836 in 10 years and $19,348 in 20 years. Every year's fee carries a compounding tail. The amount that extracted dollar would have grown to if it had remained invested for the remaining duration. The fee charged in the year 15 does not cost $6,000. It costs $6,000 plus what that $6,000 would have become in the 15 remaining years. The true cost of each year's fee is only visible at the end of the investment horizon. Here's the thing. Over 30 years, a 1% annual fee does not reduce a portfolio's value by 1%. It reduces the final portfolio value by approximately 15 to 25%, depending on starting conditions and contribution rates. On a $2 million projected portfolio, that represents $300,000 to $500,000 in compounding that never occurred. This is the mechanism most clients have never examined. The advisory fee is not invoiced. There is no bill. There is no month where the client writes a check or approves a specific payment for services received. The fee is calculated and deducted from the portfolio directly at the custodian level before the account statement is generated. The client sees a portfolio that grew from $780,000 to $700,000 and registers satisfaction. What the client does not see is that without the fee, the portfolio would have grown to $797,800. And here's the part. Any fee structure that is percentage-based, automatically deducted, and recurring compounds in the same way. Embedded mutual fund expense ratios, wrap account fees, insurance product internal charges. The fee the client cannot feel is often the fee that costs the most over time because it never triggers a check writing moment that forces the client to register its size. Asterisk, what advisors actually provide. This is not an argument that financial advisors are not worth engaging. It is an argument for running the number before concluding that the cost is acceptable. Financial advisors provide real services. Comprehensive financial planning, retirement income projections, Social Security timing strategy, Roth conversion analysis, estate planning coordination, insurance coverage review has genuine and measurable value A well-timed Roth conversion in the right tax year can produce tens of thousands of dollars in lifetime tax savings that would not have been identified without professional attention. Behavioral coaching during market volatility is also real. The advisor who calls a client in March 2020 and talks about selling a diversified portfolio down 30% is providing a service worth a year in a single conversation. Many individual investors sold in 2020. Many of those who sold spent years recovering to the position they abandoned. But here's what: these services do not scale proportionally with portfolio size. The planning complexity for $300,000 portfolio and a $3,000,000 portfolio may be nearly identical in scope. The fee is 10 times larger. A flat annual planning fee for a defined service scope often costs the client significantly less than a percentage of assets fee on a large portfolio while delivering the same work. Asterisk the low-cost alternative. Sandra ran one more number. What would have happened if the $200,000 had been placed in a low-cost total market index fund at age 32 with the same $500 monthly contribution? The expense ratio of a Vanguard total market index fund is approximately 0.03% per year on a $200,000 portfolio that is $60 annually in fees. Over 30 years, the fee drag is minimal and the portfolio returns something close to the full market return of 7%. The difference in annual fee structures, 1% versus 0.3%, is a gap of 0.97% compounded over 30 years. That gap is the $466,000. The index fund does not provide planning, tax strategy, behavioral coaching, or a phone call during a crash. The question is whether those services purchased directly and priced separately where genuinely needed would cost less than $466,000 over the same 30 years. Asterisk. 3 things. The numbers financial advisors rarely show clients are 3 calculations that take less than 30 minutes to run and that most clients have never attempted. First, the total compounding cost of the advisory fee over the full investment horizon, not the annual percentage, not the total dollars paid, but the opportunity cost of the compounding that did not occur. For a typical retirement investor with a 1% fee over 30 years, this number falls between $200,000 and $500,000. It does not appear on any statement. It is not presented at any annual review. It exists only if the client runs it. Second, the fee as a percentage of annual wealth created rather than total assets held. A 1% fee on a 1,000 portfolio is $10,000 per year. If that portfolio returned 7%, $70,000 in growth, the advisor's fee represents approximately 14% of the year's gains. The fee looks very different as a share of growth than as a share of total assets, which is precisely why it is always expressed as a share of total assets. Third, the break-even service analysis for the specific services actually delivered. What does the advisor need to provide in tax savings, planning value, and behavioral support to justify the fee being charged in a given year? On small portfolios with genuinely complex financial situations, business ownership, multiple income streams, estate complexity, the break-even is often achievable. On large portfolios holding diversified index funds with stable, simple tax situations, the break-even requires honest annual examination. And here's the part. The advisors who have never shown clients these calculations are not uniformly acting in bad faith. The fee is disclosed. The client approved it. The question is simply never asked. But the calculation belongs to the client, not to the relationship. And the client is the only one with both the incentive and the standing to run it. Asterisk the close, Sandra did not fire her advisor. She had a different conversation with him instead. She asked him to account in specific dollar terms for the value delivered in the previous 12 months. Tax loss harvesting amounts realized, estate planning hours and outcomes, specific allocation decisions made, and the reasoning behind each. He answered honestly. The accounting was more complex and more defensible than she expected. Some years, the value clearly exceeded the fee. Some years, it probably did not. They restructured the arrangement to a flat annual planning fee for a defined scope of services. Sandra's annual cost dropped from approximately $7,800 to $4,200. The remaining $3,600 per year now stays in the portfolio and compounds. In 10 years at 7%, that $3,600 per year becomes approximately $49,700. It is not the $466,000 that compounded elsewhere over the previous 20 years, but it is the $466,000 that will not compound elsewhere over the next 20. You already know what your advisor charges. The question is whether you've ever run the number that charge actually costs you. This is what we do at Vaulted Finance. The kind of money math that doesn't make the headlines, but quietly decides how the next 30 years of your life actually play out. New breakdowns drop here regularly, so subscribe if you don't want to miss the next one. And drop the topic you want us to break down next in the comments. We're reading, and the most requested ones are the ones we cover first